Welcome to Paper Trails, a podcast by Albemarle Paper about restaurants, industry news, and entrepreneurship. Hosted by Nick Kalogeromitros. Each episode features insights from industry leaders, business owners, and experts sharing what it takes to grow and succeed.
What's going on, guys? How are you? Welcome back to the Paper Trail podcast. I am your host, Nick Kalogeromitros, and we are here with a friend of mine, Will Jones, with Thompson, which we will get into here in a second, who Thompson is, what they do. But we are, looks like season 3, episode 8, and excited to bring you guys more of people's background stories and just, people of the Charlotte area. And so obviously, Will is not in the food scene, but we've met through some mutual friends. And I really love Thompson and what you guys do. And you're the president and CEO of the company. And I'm excited to tell the story of what they do. And so real quick, Will, before we get into the details of Thompson and all that, let's talk a little bit about who is Will, where are you from? Let's get a little context, a little history real fast.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. It's not that interesting. Who is Will? First and foremost, I'm a husband. Secondly, I'm a father of 5 children.
Okay.
A lot of people... I never thought I'd have 5 children, but I do have 5 children, and blessed to have those, 28 to 11.
Okay,
so we've
good range there.
Yeah, we've seen, heard, and done most of it, and with our 11-year-old learning some new things, as we were talking about pre-shoot. As an old dog, I got to learn some new tricks on how I deal with my children. Probably applies to my leadership as well. But
is there, real quick, let me pause for a second. Having a 28-year-old and an 11-year-old, can you see maybe just a different dynamic and just how culture has changed and raising an 11-year-old or a 28, or is it the same? What are your thoughts on that real fast?
I mean, it's completely different. It's not a blended family, but I was married first time, had 2 children that are now adults, and I got remarried 19 years ago. So It's a little different now. So my current wife's actually a Latina. So different culture aspect, from marrying somebody from a different culture completely than what I was used to. But I think definitely generational gaps and what's happening in 2025. Raising children in the 2020s is completely different than raising children in the early to mid 2000s, especially because of social media, technology, access to information. We don't even know what's true anymore, right? So with AI.
Yeah.
So definitely different dynamic there, and I guess it keeps me on my toes and keeps me energized. Just like I told you, I'm about to be 53 years old in a few days, and I guess it keeps me motivated to try to stay as healthy as I possibly can for them.
Amen.
So that's important. I think outside of that, I'm a person of faith, and I think that's important and kind of core to who I am. And I think in that I just care for people, no matter where they come from, no matter what their beliefs are. No matter what their choices are, just have an intrinsic desire to help others. And that's really why I do the work I've been doing for the last 32 years in human and social services. And then, I'm a leader here at Thompson and a leader in the community as best as I can. And I think that's really important. I actually get to live out my personal life mission to help others and get paid to do it, so I'm blessed.
Are you from Charlotte?
No. Is anybody from Charlotte?
A few. No, you're right.
I'm teasing. No, I'm not from Charlotte, but I quickly have I have embraced the community.
Okay.
And I think the community has embraced me. We've been here for 13 years. Moved here from Central Florida.
Okay.
I went to I call it the Harvard of the South. People laugh in my face when I do that, but University of Central Florida in Orlando. Lived and worked in Orlando for 18 years, and then was blessed to come into the Carolinas and just love the community. It's a great place to raise a family, to live, to love people, and love the Carolinas in general. But Charlotte's special to me in a lot of ways. I wouldn't imagine living a life outside of this community, probably in perpetuity. But on the flip side of that, it's such a great community in so many different ways, and we'll get into some of that. But it's not good for everybody. Charlotte has some challenges. Like every urban area has some challenges. And that's kind of the life work of Thompson to ameliorate those challenges and make sure everybody that lives and is born here has an opportunity to be super successful.
Love that. Now you came up here for work?
Yes. Like any place else, I wanted to be here and I had to get a job to do it.
Okay.
Was blessed to be part of a much, much bigger organization.
Gotcha.
Than Thompson was, and that allowed me to move into North Carolina.
Perfect.
Even though they were based out of Florida, but they did a lot of work in the Carolinas. So. Yes, I got here because of work, but I really wanted to be here because we visited and had some family up here and just saw how great of a community it is and how great the environment could be for our children.
Okay, perfect. So you had mentioned University of Central Florida?
Yes.
Okay, so would you study there? Did you know that you wanted to get into this industry? How did that kind of career projection, and the only reason I ask, Will, is there's a lot of people that, I guess our audience is a lot of business owners, people that aspire just to do better in their careers, no matter if they own a business or not. And so sometimes what you study is not what you do. Yeah. And you're so young at 18, 19, 20 to pick a major. You just don't really know the direction. And so I think it's cool for people to see from a CEO's perspective. What were you thinking in high school? Who were you in high school? What did you study? Yeah. And then how did you take the current path you're on?
Yeah, I would have envisioned leading something at some point in time. Growing up, I was an athlete. I kind of say a jack of all trades, master of none. I was good at a lot of things, not great at any. Ended up concentrating on basketball. I was blessed to play college basketball. Ended up playing University of Central Florida. Again, and through sports, I think it just inherently helped me understand what leadership is, whether it's leading yourself, leading your teammates through influence, leading others if you're in a position like a captain's role, which I was in high school and in junior college, not at University of Central Florida. But so you understand what leadership is. So I think that was probably just an inherent thing that I picked up over time. And learned of what not to do and what to do in leading people. And first and foremost, leading myself. I think that was big. But I really kind of just wanted to go into federal law enforcement. That was a dream. I wanted to be a U.S. Marshal. Initially, I was pre-law, and I went into my first big class at the University of Central Florida. It was like 150 students. And at that point in time, this is early 90s, so like the law shows, they were glamorizing lawyers. I now know it's not that glamorous because we deal and work with a lot of them, and I know a lot of them. Some of them it's glamorous, but not many. Okay. But how many of you want to be attorneys? And like everybody shot their hand up, and they was like, well, the problem right now is there's too many people wanting to be attorneys, so the jobs out there are limited, and they don't start out the pay that you think they pay. Then I hit something called Constitutional Law 1, and realized I had zero passion. For a constitutional law brief, nor was I any good at it, but I did have a passion and a desire to learn about criminal justice system and the juvenile justice systems. So I hopped into criminal justice because it was something of interest to me. It wasn't something I was really challenged to learn. I wanted to learn it. Okay. And try to teach my children the same things. Study something that you want to learn. The rest of your career will work itself out. Ended up getting a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in criminal justice. I got accepted to a federal law enforcement academy. But when I got accepted, I also was engaged to be married, my first marriage, and then I got accepted to the master's program. And then I realized law enforcement officers, God bless them, and just have a big appreciation for them, but they're underpaid and there's a lot of risk in that job. So going into a marriage and kind of starting a family, I was like, maybe it's not the best course of action. I started working with at-risk youth in a runaway and homeless youth shelter. It's sad that I remember my wages. I was making $7.07 an hour to really play basketball with kids. I actually thought it was the best job of all time, had insurance benefits, and I was just hanging out with these at-risk youth and playing basketball and trying to seed into them as best as I can and learning a lot about them, their stories, their trauma. I still tell the story of a young man. His name was Darnell, and one day we were just sitting there talking. He just said, "Mr. Will," he goes, I didn't pick my family. I didn't get a choice to pick where I was born and pick what family I was born into, and that kind of just hit home for me. Just knowing that some of us are luckier than others, and no matter where you're born into, our family, what zip code you're born into, I believe that we owe it to those children to give them an opportunity to succeed. And that's kind of really what's led me into this work for 30 plus years.
So, all right, basketball, junior college, University of Central Florida, you're learning, you were a captain, you learned how to work with a team. All right, you're getting undergraduate, a master's, criminal justice, that whole thing. You decide not to go to the marshals because engaged, you got a family, responsibilities. All this is in Florida, that first job, the $7.07?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay,
oh, yeah.
So And you were there at that first job for how long? Do you remember?
Well, I had I worked for the county in Orlando called Orange County, and I was there for 8.5 years, and there I had five different jobs. So I literally started growing pretty quickly in that work, starting at the very grassroots level, which is great for me because I get a chance to talk to our younger employees that are working in our residential facilities or working with difficult kids in Tennessee's residential facilities and the like, to say, hey, I did that job. I know how hard that is. Sure. I have compassion for you in that. And so it was great to kind of learn from the very kind of beginning of this industry. Then I literally just started showing up. I talk about this before. And this is what's missing nowadays. People so worried about what their job descriptions are. Like, that's not my job description. That's not my job description. And there's a little thing bulleted at the very, all other duties assigned. And that's where I hung out in my whole career. All other duties assigned. So when you ask me to do something, I just step up and do it, and good things just end up happening, and I end up growing into different functions and roles, learning more about our industry, learning more about business, and then quickly learning more about leadership.
I love that. So in those 8 years, real quick, obviously you mentioned a couple of things. What are some of the biggest things, obviously not just sticking to your role and being a team player and learning and I guess investing in yourself would be a good way of putting it, not just, kind of looking at the job description. Anything else that you learned in those 8 years about your industry, about children, about, obviously you mentioned, with Darnell and not choosing your family. Is there anything else that maybe one or two lessons that stand out to you about, or maybe that just opened you up a little bit to be like, dang, you know what? I've never experienced that before, but here's 4 kids that I'm playing basketball with. That anything else like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's all life-changing events with children and families became a big thing. So, but on the flip side of that, I also learned about how difficult it is for people in the industry. Something called, like military, they have PTSD.
Yeah.
Here we have post-secondary trauma or compassion fatigue, where a worker actually begins to care so much more about the clients they're working with than the clients care about themselves. So I experienced some of that early on in my career in the first few roles where I was actually dealing with children and families directly. And so for me, it just made me realize how important the work really is, that there are children out there, they just need some assistance. The families just need some assistance. They need people to kind of meet them where they are. And that, we can talk about what that means to me is meeting people where they are. And that sometimes means that not where we're comfortable as an organization, as a nonprofit, as a person. That's my comfort. I can't meet them where they are if I'm where I'm at. I got to go to where they are and meet them halfway. And that's kind of really how we've begun to kind of grow the work here at Thompson. But I think the other thing is just, and something we talk a lot about here, is this concept of chopping wood and carrying water. I think a lot of times, generationally, people want to do the job for a year and become the CEO of a company. Well, that's just not the way that works. You have to master your craft. You have to put the time in, the reps in. 10,000 hours to master.
I was just going to say that.
Mastery.
Yep.
And that's true. You might be able to do it faster, but generally 10,000 hours is 3 to 5 years, depending on how much you put into that time period. But it's 3 to 5 years to master where you currently are. And I just learned that you got to do that before you go to the next level of what we call our leadership pipeline and those type of things. And hard work pays off. It really does. But quite frankly, smart work pays off even better.
Is the 10,000 hour rule, the mastery that you're talking about, speaking as somebody that maybe would like to be on the path of they want to finish 2025 strong and go into the new year, is that something that you think is missing in today's world? Is that something that we just need to be just reminded of, maybe someone's been in a job for 10 years and they're a little more complacent and they've kind of thrown it in neutral, and you know what I mean? But they still have aspirations, they have dreams, but they've forgotten that there is a mastery part where you've got to be excellent in all areas to get the proper promotions. Is there anything like that you see as you're working with new hires and you guys are growing into different states? And is that something that
Yeah, we see that a lot. I mean, it's not a negative. I think it's great to have a desire to grow and to want to do more, but in order for you to be the best for the people around you, you have to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You have to be prepared to deal with all the situations that you're going to deal with, especially if you go into leadership. And until you really master where you are, you can't really master where you're going. And I think that's an opportunity for people to take a step back. Everybody wants to grow really fast. I wanted to grow really fast. I was blessed. I literally I was blessed with opportunities to learn different pieces of our business in that first 8-year window, where I was over grants and accounting, budgeting for the county's kind of youth service division, $40 million back then. I ran HR for the division. I was in my mid-20s. So I just started learning the whole business. And I think a lot of people don't understand when they're working for companies. There's a bigger business at play outside of just your job. Now in today's world, health insurance, risk and liability insurance, marketing, advertising, payroll, quality, people ops. There's a big business out there, and I think as a aspiring CEO, you got to take some time to learn a little bit about everything. I know enough to be dangerous, and I know a lot, but I don't know as much as the experts I surround myself with. So I know about finance and accounting, a lot of it, but not as much as our chief financial officer. And it's important. That's another important aspect. Surround yourself with people that are brighter than you. And it doesn't take long for me to find people brighter than me, but I work hard.
I love that. I think it's very, very clever. I think it's a common misconception that you have to be the know-it-all, and it's like a lot of what's the story in Think and Grow Rich when Henry Ford, was asked a bunch of questions, and his staff was questioning him and his ability, and he said, "Listen, I could push a button right here, and I get whatever answer that you want." And I was like, what a wise thing to say. You don't have to know. Now, obviously, it's important to know some stuff.
Sure.
But to have the right team around you, I love that. So, okay, 8.5 years, Florida.
Yep.
You're learning grants. You're learning HR. You're learning grassroots, bottom level, working with the young children. Where does that take you? You stay in Florida? Do you change company? Where does that take you?
Yeah, 8.5 years in, working. I work for the government, and I realized that's not necessarily for me. Kind of my behavioral profile, if you will, is more entrepreneurial, hard charging. I would say low in process orientation. I believe in policy, but just not that many of them.
Okay.
Working for government became really hard. You got to ask multiple levels of permission to order a box of pens and things like that. And I'm probably exaggerating, but not really.
Yeah.
The amount of red tape that happens in government.
Why is that, you think?
I think because it's big business. I don't think people realize. Thompson's gone from, being right here in Charlotte to being in 5 states. We've gone from 185 employees to 600 employees, $8 million in service revenue to $60 million in service revenue. Well, I guarantee you the amount of process we have in place now is completely different than what we had in place 8 years ago when I got here.
That's fair.
So I do think when you grow, and I think, it's probably a little bit of overcorrection, overreaction in reference to the bigger you are, you need more process to kind of keep your hands and fingers on the pulse of what's going on.
Okay.
I think it's really more around risk and liability, to be honest with you. I always said, because I also went into a job for a couple of years where we were actually selling solutions to government, and I always said our biggest competition was fear of change and fear of innovation. Because we were selling to government. We couldn't sell it. It took 2 years to sell them a solution to something that was a present day problem.
Dang.
Again, no knock on government. We work with them and deal with them. It just wasn't for me.
I get it.
Had an opportunity to be a chief operating officer, actually in the hometown I grew up in, a beach community about an hour outside of Orlando, serving youth and families in that community. And I sprinted to that job. I'm sprinting to that COO role, my late 20s. And then when I sprinted, I was like, what's holding me back? I look back, like 98% of our funding is still government funding. So I didn't really sprint too far away from the red tape, if you will. But had an opportunity to kind of make some faster decisions within the constraints that we had. So,
how did you go from 8 years into a COO position? Was that just, opportunity, just, things just lined up? Anything?
Yeah. With humility, it's, a lot of it has to do with luck, right? But I started learning the importance of networking, being of value to people, getting yourself out there a little bit so they could see who you were and what you were about. I think that helped. I think, again, when I was talking about that well-rounded opportunity, I really did know the business from direct care to HR to admin to finance to procurement to quality. I just had these opportunities that people don't necessarily just get. And I just had them in that first 8 years. So I was kind of moving in and out of these roles, almost like a unstructured apprenticeship program, if you will. Like it wasn't meant to be that way. It just ended up being that way. So the person that took a risk on me and hired me to be her COO, she was amazed about how much I knew. But I was feeding myself, researching the industry, reading articles, reading journals back. We have journals back then. Now it's just like everything's on, social media and everything else. We were actually reading paper. But I was wanting to know more about the industry. I was curious about what was working, what didn't work, and I think that showed out.
I'm just curious for myself. How much do you think luck plays in success? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, maybe 1%. I mean, there is a little luck. I mean, you want to have some humility on how you talk about it, but really just hard work, hard intentional work is super important, as well as, we use this concept called being the ideal team player. Humble, hungry, and smart. Patrick Lencioni's stuff, if you've ever heard of him. And, humble is not, are you coachable? Do you have the humility to own when you've made a mistake? Can you learn and grow? And that's important as a CEO. So, when I got here, I was first-time CEO, by the way. This is my first job as a CEO. I was a COO a couple times. And I say this today, if I stop learning, we're all in trouble. Because, I came in as an $8 million CEO. Now I'm a $60 million CEO, but we're growing to get, our goal is to get 100. Well, I got to learn to be a $100 million CEO because I'm not that yet.
Amen.
So when I stop learning and growing, we're all in trouble.
Yep.
I promise you that. And so that humility is important. Hungry. You got to have hunger. You got to have drive. You want to learn more. You want to accomplish more. You want to achieve outcomes. If you're selling, you want to make your sales quota and blow it out of the water. That hunger is important. You want to get things done.
Yep.
Just showing up isn't good enough. And I think a lot of people, they think they're working hard, but they're just showing up. They're just showing up.
Yeah.
They have no discipline, no habits, no desire, no drive.
Yeah.
They're just showing up. And then they look in the mirror and say, why aren't I promoted? I'm over here every day. But you're not intentional. You're not working hard. You're not feeding yourself. It's like going to church every Sunday and do nothing else for the rest of the week. That's not appropriate.
Yeah.
So, we got that humility, and then you got to be smart. And this is not intelligence. I mean, as you know, by talking to me for a few minutes, I'm not super smart, but people smart. Can you read the room? Can you interact with others? Can you see what's going on with people when they're feeling down?
Yep.
They need a pep talk. They need a hug. They need a pat on the back. So people smart becomes super important. So if you're all three of those things, I think that's really critical.
I love that. Yeah, the reason I ask is early in my career, my cousin and I started our paper company. We sell paper goods to restaurants, and we were 22 and 18, so we were super young.
That's awesome.
And we've been doing that 16, going on 17 years now. And it's in the beginning, I thought it was 0% luck. I'm like, there's no luck. And then the longer, the longer that I'm doing this, I'm like, you know what? Like, we started in 2008, 2009. The industry, we came into the restaurant industry when it was kind of, I'm like, yeah, you know what? There might have been a little bit of play in it, but like you said, a lot of the factors are in your control, more than you think.
Yeah.
It's not like, anything was handed to us at all. There was tons of work, just like for yourself.
Yeah. What I experienced, the harder I worked, the luckier I got.
100. I agree with that.
There's a little corollary there in causation, right? So I think a lot of people just want to do nothing and be lucky. No, you got to create your luck.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so you're going into your first COO role.
Yeah.
How long were you there? What was that like? What are some learning experiences going from just I don't want to say just a HR person, but now you're in management. Now you're in C-suite executive. Yeah. What was that like? What are some takeaways? How long were you there? You give us some feedback.
Yeah, and I was in management. I was in senior management prior to. Because I was running all admin and support for a major division of the county in my mid-20s. But this was completely different, right? So you're reporting to a CEO that had kind of built the organization to what it was. You're kind of walking and running day-to-day operations into a culture of busyness. I'll never forget my first day on that job. It was funny, and life lesson. Don't ever take a job on a blind. Go figure out where you're going to sit. See where you're going to sit. See what kind of resources you have. Talk to the people that you're going to lead. And I've done that ever since that, because I really walked in. There was a thing called an E-machine. You ever heard of it?
No.
It was like a $200 computer. I'm working for the county. We had good tech. I'm walking in. There's my office, and there's this thing called an E-machine. I said, "What's an E-machine?" It's like a $200 computer. It was just, the tech was awful. It was a smaller organization, but the interesting thing is there was a person underneath me that was running all of our programs, and she was just running around the whole time. I'll just never forget this. This is a long time ago now. I was like, "I'm so busy. I'm so busy. I'm busy. I'm busy." She really suffered from busyness, right? And then after watching her for 2 days, I say, "Cass, come over here." I said, "I finally realized what you were busy doing." And she goes, "What is it?" "Telling everybody how busy you are." Right? So for me, it was an eye-opener. That was my real coachable moment. You got to be transparent with people as a leader in a kind and compassionate way. But this person was working herself up into a frenzy every single day and actually accomplishing zero, outside of telling me and everybody else how busy she was. What we call that is she was justifying her pay. She wasn't earning it. She was justifying it with a conversation of busyness. And I carry that forward to the day. That's why I'm not busy. I'm intentional with my time, but I'm not busy. My calendar's not completely booked up. Some days are busier than others. There's white spots in my day where I'm thinking. I'm strategically thinking. I'm engaging. I'm networking. I'm meeting new people. But busyness is not what I'm about. It's intentionality.
That's so interesting you say that. Earlier this year, Will, I had a gentleman on the podcast that runs a $40+ million pest control business, and he said that his executives, he gives them enough work to occupy about 70 or 80% of their time, and he said how important it was to leave some space, because that's where thinking happens, creativity happens, ideas happen. And you know what? Before that conversation earlier this year, I had never heard that before.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually think that's too much. I think about 60%. I think you need to have 40% white space. If you're a leader of any kind, you should have 40% white space on your calendar to think. And not just to think, but you need to be available to people you're leading on a dime. So I have so much white space. If my people needed me, they're going to get to me, because I'm not going to. This is pre-scheduled. I'm not going to push this for that. This is on the calendar. I have white space. I have 4 hours of white space in my calendar today. And that's important. So there's availability to hop in the day if there's an emergency. So intentionality, I always say to this, how valuable do you think your time is? And some people will start calculating their annual salary divided by 20/80. Now, that's not the value of the time. That's how much you make at work. What's the value of an hour of your time? Like I believe my time's worth more than I get paid an hour, for a lot of different reasons, because I don't get paid at home through money. I mean, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a friend, I'm a partner. Those are things that are important. So my time is super valuable. How I choose to use it is going to be critical.
How did you learn about that white space thing?
Over time.
Okay,
a lot of errors. I always say, I know kind of walking through my backstory, but literally into my early 40s, most of what I learned about leadership was wrong.
Unpack that. What do you mean?
Yeah, I mean it's going to be real clear. Workers think that leaders that lead well are the ones that do their job for them, or tell them what to do and how to do it. And generally, it's more, if they've done my job for me in a pinch, or when I'm down, then they're great. And I was that person. I was saving the day. Well, correlate that to kind of everyday heroes. Who saves the day? Is it the firefighter or fire chief? The firefighter is the one who saves the day. That's the hero. So when leaders become heroes, that's a problem. So what ends up happening is you have to lead at level, lead through your people, teach them how to do things, coach them around them, let them fail, let them learn. Montessori, the person who invented the Montessori school, great quote: "Whatever you do for me, you take away from me." And most leaders take everything away from people they're leading.
Yeah, I mean, I think leaders naturally like to be in charge and in control, and I think that's something that I think you have to develop that, you have to learn that, and so I think there's a lot of wisdom in that quote.
Yeah, there's another an individual I work with, Tony Smith. I'll just give him a shout out. Maybe it makes the pod, but leadership is not normal. You have to delegate something that you can do in a much faster time in a better way to somebody that's going to take longer and may not do it the right way. You have to do that. That's what leadership is. It's not doing for them because it's easier for you to do it.
Yeah.
You know, leadership is about, holding people accountable, having difficult conversations. And what ends up happening is people are so soft around it. Most people are not coachable right now because nobody's ever really coached them, been transparent with them. And I this quote that another person tells me, it just stays with me. It's like, feedback is a gift. Failure to give it from a leadership perspective is a lack of courage. I don't know about you, but I don't want my wife to be married to a husband that doesn't have courage. I don't want to be a father of children that has a dad that doesn't have courage. So I'm going to give that feedback.
Dang, I love that. That's awesome. Now you're firing me up right now. Okay. All right. So anything else that you learned being a COO? How long were you there at that smaller organization? Were you there for a while?
Yeah, I was there for about 2.5 years.
Okay.
Here's one thing I learned. Don't commute longer than an hour. So I commuted a longer an hour one way. So it was 2 hours both ways from where I lived to where I was going to work. I think that's one thing I would just really encourage people to think before they take those jobs. And we see that now. It's a little bit more hybrid-y. But the reality of a 1 hour commute one way is basically you're predicting turnover because eventually it just doesn't work.
So you're going 2 hours one way?
2 hours, 2 hours round trip.
Okay, so 1 hour there, 1 hour back.
Trip. I think that and just vet, make decisions on who you're going to follow. That was another thing I would say. And the person that was there, great, but I learned more about what not to do as a leader than I did about what to do moving forward. And that's with all respect.
Sure.
I learned a lot of great things about the person that led me, but it was interesting. I mean, too much change is difficult as well. So you got to really, I always believe is you get to pick and choose where you work, and you get to pick and choose who you work for, and be selective in that. I had a boss tell me once, it's like, don't just jump on any dog with fleas. Don't work that way. It's not going to help your career. And it's so funny and interesting and concerning how many people leave good leadership to run away from accountability, transparency, to go and just follow other people that just do their jobs for them and tell them they're A players when they're C players. God bless you, and I hope it works out.
That's so funny. That's so funny because I think as much as it'll make people uncomfortable to have those uncomfortable conversations, I think it's what everybody craves. People want boundaries. People want rules. People want to be in an organization where there's systems in place, right? I don't know. That's interesting. And then they run from it, and they're like, "Oh wow, this isn't what I thought it was."
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay. Anything in particular that you learned what not to do in that role from a leadership perspective that maybe you can shine some light on that somebody can learn from?
Yeah, I think just reactionary changes. Just saw the leader would literally go off for a month or two, and then come back, and then all of a sudden we'd have a reorg, just like that, with no rhyme or reason. And I think as a leader to go back and think and strategize is fine, but how you deploy change is super important. You don't want to shock the water. You don't want to shock the culture so bad where it's not good. It's not good for the people working in it. In our industry, if it's not good for the people working in it, it's not good for the people receiving the service. It's just inherently a bad recipe.
Okay.
So I think just thinking through change and implementing change is important. Not to the point where I've also seen that it's like any and all change is a problem and it takes forever to do it. Not to that level, but just understand how you do that in a way that's palatable, that makes sense, and doesn't really just shock the culture in a negative way.
Okay. So there 2.5 years,
Yep.
First COO role.
Yep.
Where does your career go after that?
Yeah, crazy. I don't want to say, it's not a real sabbatical. That's kind of a phrase I hear a lot more lately. I literally just said, hey, I want to take a break. And I went into the mortgage industry for 2 years.
Okay.
And honestly, because the mortgage industry was popping back then.
What year was this?
Pre-08? No, it was early 2000s. Yeah.
Okay.
Like early 2000s, before 2005, maybe 2002, 2003. Big money to be made there. And here's what I learned there, because I became an individual contributor. I was making money. I bonused first month I was there, calling people, chatting it up, selling. But what I really missed was leading. And then I realized, you asked about how do you know about leadership. because when you're not leading, you're misleading. That's when you know where you're not. For me, it's not where I was being called to be.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm not a great leader, but I just like to do it.
Yeah.
So
I
just believe I was called, man. Who cares how good you are, man? But I just want to do it. I miss it. And so I did that for a little bit, and then I hopped back in our industry pretty quick as a senior leader in Orlando, another company, a big company there, and learned a lot there too.
You were there for a while?
I was there for 3 years.
Okay.
In that role, it was a turnaround. In a lot of ways, bigger company, but I was running maybe a county and a half of services, and it was interesting. That's where I met my wife. Working in a high Latin speaking, Hispanic speaking population in Kissimmee, Florida. A lot was going on in life at that point in time. I was getting divorced, so I had the 2 kids, leading this turnaround. But actually on the work side, that was one of the funnest times that I've had as a leader, because I actually got to kind of reframe the culture and support the people that like they've never been supported, by making good, smart decisions that were focused on them.
Yeah.
We actually went an entire year without one person leaving, which in our industry is unheard of. Like to go 365 days with 0 person leaving the work because of the intensity and the trauma that comes with it. Was amazing. I'm still proud of that.
You've said the word culture a lot.
Yep.
Unpack that for me. How important is it? How much effort do you put towards it? Is that something that everyone's got to buy in as far as management, leadership, C-level? Let's talk about, because I feel like culture it's not something that you say or do or write down. It's a spirit. It's an environment. It's something that people really believe to their core. What are your thoughts on culture?
Yeah, I think culture's king. There's 2 things that are king. Cash is king and culture is king in business. I got to be honest with you, because if you don't have money, it's really hard to have.
That's true.
and vice versa. So there's a corollary between those things. But I do think the culture is important, and that's how you live out your beliefs. What's important to you? What are your values? How do you live them out? And I think that's one of the largest jobs for a CEO or a business leader, no matter what your title, is to establish and be a keeper of that culture. And that's what we try to do. We use the phrase "keeper of the culture" all the time, because I think it's important that people are living, breathing what we believe.
I love that.
So, our culture has has got an undergird of different beliefs that we've created over time that kind of allow us, to live our culture. So what do we believe? Well, even though we're a non-for-profit, no margin, no mission. That plays well in your business too. If you're not making money, you're not in business, right? So we have the same concept. Everything begins and ends with leadership. Always be learning.
Yep.
When we stop learning, we're dead.
Yep.
In God we trust, all others bring data.
I like that.
We're a data-driven organization. We need to make data-driven decisions. Always improving is another. So these are beliefs that we've developed, which is part of the undergirding of what we do and how we do it. You don't leave organizations, you leave leaders and teammates. So those are all drive into how we live and breathe and talk here as leaders, and then hopefully employees follow along with that. And to your point, it is something that's kind of out there in the ether. And it's a living. It changes, it adapts, it morphs. But here's the problem. If it's not based on foundational beliefs, then it's going to be changing all the time. Everything has to come back to those beliefs. If I believe in leadership, hopefully you get a sense in talking to me any point in time that I believe in leadership.
Yep.
If I believe in leadership and that's part of the culture, you're going to feel that. If all of a sudden that belief doesn't exist and we don't talk about leadership anymore, the culture's changed drastically.
Yeah.
And probably for the worse, not the better.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think also the leadership, the ownership, what they really believe will get filtered and put into the group, right?
Yeah.
Like if there is a high work ethic between leadership, that will trickle down.
Yeah.
People will see, well, dang, look at the so and so, and I mean they're leading by example. They're not positional leaders; they're servant leaders. So I think I really have to agree with that. Where it's kind of who you are and what you stand for and what you truly believe. and people see that you care, and thus they will care. Or people that care will be attracted to your organization and will stay with you because they see that you truly care. So
yeah, and here's the other thing I'll just tell you, just kind of toying around with this idea, and there's also two other types of leaders within the organization you got to be careful for. One, you either want a conduit or a buffer. The conduit is the leader we want. So it's the conduit of the culture, conduit of the values, conduit of the beliefs. They're driving those down in the same way the play is being called from the headset to the field, they're running it.
Yep.
And then there's people out there that all of a sudden want to run audibles that aren't approved. Those are buffers. They want to buffer the culture. They want to filter it. So by the time it gets down to the end, it's not even culture anymore.
Yeah.
They've kind of created a subculture. When you find them, it's like a cancer. Cut them out and get rid of them. They're not good for you. And we've seen that over and over again.
Speaking of cutting out and getting rid of them, is it easy for you to fire people? Or in the past, is it easy for you to fire? Are you like...
That's a great question. No, it's never easy.
I hate firing people.
Well, I don't think it's hate's the word. Whenever I make a decision that's going to impact somebody's ability to make a living, like...
It's tough.
Well, unless you're a computer, which I'm not. I know some people may act like I feel like I'm one sometimes, but like you got to lose a little sleep on that. You got to think twice. So, for me, those are decisions that are not made lightly. And I also have to look at myself. If it's me and somebody that works directly for me, I have to look in the mirror and I have to answer a few questions. Was I honest with them? Did I give them clarity about what was expected of them? Did I teach them things that they needed to learn and get better at to do the job? Did I coach them while they were working on those things I taught them to get better? Did I give them opportunity to make adjustments and improvement? And again, go back to that transparency. Was I honest with them about what I saw? And if I check the boxes there, it becomes easier, but not fully easy.
Sure.
I mean, again, remember, I told you my life's mission is to help people. Inherently, when you terminate somebody, you feel like you're hurting them, but here's the reality. You're actually helping them. They just don't know in the moment.
Yeah.
They go off into something else. They're not happy anyway. They're not producing. They know that. They're looking at themselves in the mirror, and they know they're not showing up well. They go off and find out a place where they can show up better, and they're happy that you did what you did in the moment.
Yep.
What I like to say is, no leader ever said, hey, I wish I would have waited longer. I wish I would have waited a little longer to make that decision. Have you?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. You're right. I mean, I tend to wait longer, but I know it's not the right thing to do. But it's such an uncomfortable thing because we have such a big heart and compassion and empathy for the person and their situation where, you're right. They're good people. They're just not meant to do that thing. They're meant to do this thing over here, which they'll be happier and they'll do better job and they'll make more money and all the things.
I don't know if it helps. I mean, for me, sometimes I just say, hey, the truth is I didn't fire them at all. They fired themselves.
That's true. I believe that.
But yeah, I don't think it's easy to impact lives in a negative way.
Yep.
I mean, quite frankly, even if I fire you, I try to help you. I just want to help you find something that's going to be good for you and good for where you're going. And at the end of the day, and I just said something about this recently. I mean, it actually goes to a corollary on sport. Like, the individual can't outweigh the team. Can't do it. Can't do it. As a leader of an organization, a leader of a unit, leader of anything, if you're a leader of a team in any way, shape, or form, you cannot be loyal to an individual over to loyalty of the team. The moment you do that, bad things happen. People will leave because now you're the problem. You're the leader. You haven't made a decision. Now I'm going to leave you because that person's still here. I don't want that.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, all right. So, break, sabbatical, got back in. Mortgage, got back into the industry. Going through some difficult times. The whole thing. Where do you go from there?
Yeah.
How do things progress?
Really turned the organization around a lot of ways. Felt good to be part of it. Learned a lot from that organization. It was a company called Children's Home Society of Florida. Learned a lot about leadership, actually. They were one of the first organizations that literally invested time, money, and energy into developing leaders. And I was exposed to that. So that was a great opportunity. But I was blessed. I did so well. Somebody called me and said, hey, I want you to come do the same thing over here, for more money at a higher level. Wow. So, that was a no-brainer. Okay. It was basically in the same community. So it was another turnaround. They were the organization, not the organization as a whole, but the kind of where I was being called into was a shambles. Again, a culture problem. I took the job anyway. I don't know if I was cocky or stupid, maybe a little both. When you fix one thing, you can fix them all. I can now tell you that's not necessarily true.
Okay.
But I took that opportunity to go to another organization in that community to try to do the same thing I'd done in Osceola County in Orange, which is right next door.
Okay.
And I was there in that organization for 4 years. They're a company called One Hope United now out of Chicago. Still doing work in Florida. Proud to be an alumni of that group. Another organization that really invested a lot in leadership.
Okay. And did it work, the turnaround?
Oh, yeah, it actually did.
Okay.
The CEO,
So
I
you
just
do know what
hired
you're
a
doing.
COO that was a supervisor there for me in Orlando. That is now the COO here at Thompson.
That's awesome.
We turned that around in a lot of ways. Again, it was difficult. It was a culture. There was a lot of culture issues around the way work got done, and literally just because the expectations were low. So here's the reality: if I set expectations low, we hit low expectations, we're going to lose our contract. We're going to lose our funding. We're going to lose momentum. We're going to lose our ability to increase impact. My expectations are so high for myself and others. Even when we miss, which we will because they're so high, we're still going to be really good.
I love that.
But yeah, that worked out really well. Was there for 4 years and a year, and that's when I kind of felt like North Carolina was the place we needed to be.
Okay. And then you got recruited up here?
No, actually, it was funny. I mean, interesting, and sometimes when you're trying to get into a new community, it's hard because nobody knows you. Like I wasn't getting interviewed for jobs that were like 3 levels below my experience. Funny story, I ended up getting up here, went to go talk to a CEO that we were actually going to do an acquisition of their organization. I became a CEO of a much bigger organization. And I said, you wouldn't remember me, but I applied for a job 3 levels down, but now I'm here to talk about how we're going to acquire you. So I felt pretty good in the moment,
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know
what a boss move.
That approach didn't really work well, but I felt like I needed to get it out. I mean, just like I said, most of what I learned was through mistakes I made in life, including that conversation. But it felt good in the moment.
Maybe say that after the acquisition happened.
Yeah, but me at that point in time, I was so immature in my even in my late 30s, maybe very, very early 40s. I still said it when I shouldn't have said it. It's like you keep on learning and growing as a leader and as a human being, and that was just a funny thing. But eventually, what ended up happening is I had told somebody in our industry in Florida that I wanted to move here, and he goes, "Hey, there's a job of a Florida company that's looking for a state director in North Carolina," and so he referenced me to the person. I actually knew the COO of that company. It was called Eckerd. You remember the old Eckerd Drugs?
Yeah.
Jack and Ruth Eckerd started a youth organization called Eckerd Youth Alternatives. They're now Eckerd Connects. They were a big organization, $200, $300 million a year in 10 states.
Jeez.
North Carolina was one of them, and he connected me on Friday. The guy called me on Saturday. I interviewed on Monday. Interesting, I had like a 6-hour interview. I was meeting with everybody in the C-suite. I thought it was going to be like a 1-hour interview. I'd catch a bite afterwards. So I go in there at 11 o'clock, didn't eat anything. Like in my stomach, they're bringing me around robin throughout the office. I'm like, man, this is really quirky. Like I'm meeting with everybody and I'm starving. And my phone was in the car. So anyway, I did all these interviews. I come back and he goes, hey man, we can't give you the job. North Carolina director. I was like, well, I didn't say this to him. Sometimes I'm smart about it, but in my mind I was like, man, why you waste my day?
Yeah.
My stomach is hurting because I haven't eaten anything. And he goes, we can't give it to you. You'd be bored in 30 days. What we want to do is offer you a VP of National Services. He goes, but you can move to North Carolina. And I said, well, okay. And then he goes, how much you want to make? And I'm not going to share this because then everybody knows too much about my Kool-Aid. But I put a number out, and here's how you know I didn't negotiate it well. Done. I was like, I didn't think through that. I should have stretched a little bit more.
Yeah.
I don't give myself enough credit, probably. But anyway, the number I gave was appropriate for the time and for the role and good for me. And I just said, hey, let me go talk to my family, and I'll get back to you. And Went to the car. My wife, I mentioned she's Latina, right?
Yeah.
Colombian. I got like 20 calls. Where are you? Who are you with? I'm like, I just got out of the interview. And she's like, ¿Cómo no? If you know Spanish. So, I'm like, really? They offered me the job. It was funny. It's like, actually, they offered me a better job than I came for. And we can move to North Carolina. So like 2 days later, I'm waiting for this guy to call me. I'm calling it back. All right, I'm going to take the job. Nobody calls me. Just like random. I'm wondering if like they changed their mind. I got this like ghost. And then, and I was getting nervous because I was ready. At that point in time, I was already committed to moving.
Yeah.
And then just a random call. No, I didn't forget about you. I've been busy. And again, here's my immaturity. I lived and worked in Orlando my whole adult career. And he was like, oh, forgot to talk to you about relocation expenses. How's this much money for relocation? I was like, oh, you're going to pay me to move? I was like, all right. I had no idea.
Yeah.
It was just funny. The things you don't think about until you experience them as an individual at all, at any level. And now obviously, if I got called tomorrow, it'd be like, okay, let me talk about the relocation package and all that stuff. But it was funny in the moment. So I just felt like it was meant to be.
That's awesome.
And then we packed up and moved to Carolina.
Nice.
Got here in April, and there was snow on the ground actually in Greensboro. My first meeting was in Greensboro. But
that's pretty unusual for us. April and a little snow.
Early April, and I'm like, why is it snowing here? This is crazy. Yeah.
Especially you from Florida. Yeah. You're like, this is.
Yeah. I tell you, it's been 13 winters, man. I got this jacket I bought year one, and it literally sits in my closet.
At the very back.
And just stays there. I have not yanked that thing out in 12 years. Even when we go to the snow, I don't yank this thing out. I'm burning up in it now, right? So it's just funny how that works. But it was a blessing.
That's awesome.
Just happy to be here.
So you moved up here.
Yep.
You were with that company, I'm sure, for
I was with that company about 4 years.
Okay.
I've had this trajectory. There's a data point out there somewhere. Right? It's probably a hell of a lot lower than it was, but most people on average are with a company 3.5 years, and most people are in their current position less than 2 years. So I had this thing where I was probably about 3 years on average in a role. Whether it was a different company or not became irrelevant. But and I think sometimes people look at that as a negative. But I think if you're to look at the trajectory of learning and growth in that, it could be a positive.
Okay.
And actually, it was funny when I was applying for the job I'm in. One of the board members wanted to meet me on Saturday. I was like, "Hey, babe, that guy wants to meet me on Saturday." And she was like, "Why doesn't he meet you on Saturday? That's our time." And I was like, "Well, I better go down there. If I want this job." And I'll talk about how I got there. But he was like, "I'm a little concerned about your instability." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He was like, "Well, you move around every 3 years." I was like, "No, I move up every 3 years. Not around."
Yeah.
So and now here I am 8 years and 7 months later at Thompson. So
nice.
Kind of worked out in that way. Sometimes you got to keep on moving until you get to where you're supposed to be.
Love that.
And when you're where you're supposed to be, you settle in.
How did you get introduced to Thompson?
Yeah, so worked at that company, Eckerd, for about 3 years. Ran national services. So I thought I was going to do a lot of work in North Carolina. I did a little bit of work in North Carolina initially, and then started working outside of the state in a lot of ways. So I was doing about 185 nights a year outside of the community.
Wow.
It was wearing on me. And then I had an opportunity to go be a subject matter expert at SAS, the software company, analytic software company out of Cary, big multi-billion-dollar software company, to be a subject matter expert in my space on the government side. And, kind of like going into that mortgage, I was kind of ready to kind of just step away for a minute, take a breath. Eckerd was a hard-charging, very, very high-impact, high-driven organization. We were growing $10 million a year, 24/7. You get a phone call at 10 o'clock at night, you're on it. I mean, it's just grind. And I would just say, cultures like that aren't for everybody. It was for me. It was great for me. I really enjoyed it and learned a lot. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't great for the fam. So they recruited me, and I was like, okay, this sounds cool. And I went over to their campus. Google actually modeled the Google campus out from the SAS campus visit.
Wow.
It's really that kind of a cool place to work. One of the best places to work in the world, really. And I was like, man, I got to experience that because I've been working for government and non-for-profit, man. I want to know what it like to feel to work for one of the best places to work in the world, right? Sure. And it was pretty cool. But here was the uncool thing. I did 200. I went from 185 nights a year to 220 nights a year. And I was an individual contributor. I was influencing and leading, but not leading people individually. And then again, I missed leadership again. I guess, I kept on saying, I guess this leadership thing is something for me. I better start figuring this thing out and how to do it better. Because I miss it and I want to go do it. But the truth be told, my wife and I, we had 3 young boys at the time. They're now 17, 13, and 11. But you go back 9 years ago, they're what? 8, 4, and 2 or something like that. And I was in Tallahassee, Florida at the legislature giving testimony there one day. My wife said, come home right now. And I'm like, babe, I just missed the last flight out. She was like, come home right now. So what do? Get in my car and drive home. 8 hours. By the time I get home, what's going on? Shh, all the boys are in bed. I just drove 8 hours, like on fumes to get there, like emergency. And I think what it was is like God was telling us, hey, it's time. Like I'm getting ready to open up a door. You don't know what it is yet. I don't know what it is, but it's time. I started a lot of anxiety started coming every time I traveled. And it was cool because, have you ever been American Airlines recently? Mm-hmm. Concierge key members come up. That's like before first class.
Okay.
That was when Will Jones used to walk up. I traveled so much. I was on the plane before the damn pilot was, right? Which is cool in the moment, but when you think about all the things you're missing, ball games. Now there's a graduation for everything, like first grade, second grade, third grade. Like when I came up, you graduated your 12th grade and that was it. There's a graduation. You're just missing all these family-oriented things. And it's just it begins to slowly start ripping the family apart. So those things started coming up. And so now it's funny, I'll sit in the very back and coach and I'll be the happiest guy in the world because I don't miss a game, I don't miss a practice, I don't miss an event. We go on date nights, we do things, we go to soccer games, basketball games, football games. And I fly like 4 times a year. But I was flying 220 nights a year, and that was starting to rip the family apart. My wife was going to kill me or leave me. Either way, I didn't want either of it to happen. So started kind of entertaining some new things. And the interesting thing about Thompson, you never know what you're going to end up getting. I was in a lunch meeting in Raleigh, and somebody in the industry said, hey, the Thompson job's open. I said, I know the organization. I'm not interested in it. That was the end of that. A few weeks later, I was home-based. That means sometimes my wife would send me to Harris Teeter to do grocery shopping on my work day. This was pre-pandemic. This was like I was home-based. But go to Harris Teeter. Okay. So I'm at Harris Teeter. I get a phone call. Hey, I just got a call from my headhunter. There's a job there locally. I said, is it Thompson? They said, yeah, I'm recommending you. I said, no, I don't want it. Let it go again. Took another trip. Anxiety. Didn't want to leave at all. Like, didn't want to go. I think it was New York City or something. I was giving testimony up there. And, and they were getting anxious. The kids were getting anxious. Everybody was anxious. Like, it was just like I didn't want to leave. So I came back another trip to Harris Teeter. Kid you not. We need milk again. I have 3 boys, right? So, and then another person that used to work for me in Texas called me. Hey, I just got a call from a headhunter about a job right there in Charlotte. And I told him, you got somebody right there in Charlotte you should talk to. And gave your name. I said, that's so crazy. You're the third person that's asked me about the job. And I said, you know what? Tell them to call me. I'll listen to what's going on. And they called me. The headhunter called me.
Okay.
Put my hat in the ring. Really went through this long, and which I really appreciated. It was a vetting process. I was vetting them. They were vetting me. It took months, and intentionally. I wanted it to take long, as did they. They wanted to make sure it was the right fit, and as did I. Because you make decisions you react to them. But it was like due diligence. I want to see your financials, your org chart. I was asking for documents. I was reviewing stuff. They were asking for things from me, and then somewhere down the line, apparently I was a second choice. The first one fell out. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, I was about to say after months.
Yeah, there was another person, but then I guess they ended up leaning on me. It was funny. Yeah. The team here, I found out because they did a good job where I actually. The 2 top candidates interviewed with the leadership team that they were going to inherit. Okay. Well, the team here actually selected the other candidate. The board selected me.
Wow. Okay.
So as you can imagine, there was probably a reason they thought the other person was going to fit better with them than I was going to. So that team's no longer here.
Yeah.
No, seriously.
Okay.
That team is no longer here.
Okay.
And because that team was part of the reason the organization wasn't moving forward. They were getting in the way of progress. They were stuck in their ways. It was okay to have 7 people to turn a light on. right? You know, we weren't efficient, we weren't effective, we weren't being good stewards, we weren't making impact. You know, the first meeting I went into, they was like, well, let's vote on that. I said, what's going on here? Like, I'm like day 2, we had I was meeting my team, they're voting on stuff. And I'm like, this is crazy. And I just said, hey guys, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we're not voting. You're going to give me your feedback, and I'm going to make a decision. There is no vote. And then I realized right then and there why I wasn't their pick, because they wanted to vote on things and think everything was a democracy in our organization. It's just not. As a leader, I have to want their feedback. I have to ask for it and really want to hear it and understand their logic. But I have to make a decision, or I have to empower people to make decisions. But even then, they need to go back and get feedback. Voting doesn't work, not in a business.
I love that. Well, Thompson, you made the right decision. Okay, so
well, we don't know about that yet. But
we know.
It's been 8 years and 7 months, twice as long as I've been anywhere. So it's been the right decision for me. Anyway.
No, I love it. Okay, real quick, Will. If people have never heard of Thompson before, really quick, let's tell them, what is Thompson? What do you do? What are you about? Let's give people a little snippet if they've never heard of you guys. You know, about the organization. Yeah.
Thompson is, first of all, we're getting ready to celebrate 140 years in the Charlotte market. So we are a not-for-profit that's part of the trail of history. We're in the inner fabric of this community. 140 years next year. Those are important things, kind of become irrelevant because communities change really quick, as does Thompson. But you know, we are the largest youth-serving organization here in the Charlotte market. And we do 3 things. We do prevention, mental health, and foster care services for at-risk youth, children, their families, and communities. We do that now from the mountains to the coast in both Carolinas. We're statewide in Tennessee. We do work in Tampa and in Orlando, Florida. And we just opened up offices in Kentucky, Bowling Green, and Louisville. We are on a mission to serve 8,000 unique children a year in the next 5 years, and to be the biggest, baddest, and best thing in the southern United States in what we do.
I love that. If there's anybody that wants to help or be a part of Thompson or contribute or anything like that, how can people help? How can they be part of the team, organization? Is there anything that, like a call to action for people listening?
Absolutely. You know, and I go back to when I started in this industry at that first job, $7.07 an hour, there was this concept. It's an old African proverb. It takes a village to raise a child. I didn't believe it for the longest time. Well, as the CEO of Thompson, I believe it more than I ever did. It really does take a village to raise a child. We need community. First of all, I need community to take the blinders off, look around. No matter where you live. If you're in Ballantyne, drive up to West Boulevard, hang a left, look around. We got a lot of needs around us. No matter where you are, whether you're in Charlotte, whether you're in Nashville, whether you're in Knoxville, whether you're in Orlando, open your eyes. There's problems everywhere in our communities. There's children sleeping in offices. We have more children in our foster care system than we have foster homes. 4 calls to action, and everybody can participate. It doesn't matter what you want to do, what you can do, you can participate. Volunteer. Last time I checked, everybody can volunteer. Everybody can volunteer. Something. If you're interested in being a foster parent, ask questions. Think about what fostering could look like. Ask us about fostering. Again, we need about 5,000, actually we need about 15,000 more homes in North Carolina to meet the need.
15,000?
15,000. In order to meet the need, you need 4 homes for every 1 child in care. We have 0.5 homes for every one child in care. That's not what we need. So we're not there yet. Give. But I'm going to hold off on that one. You can give. Or you can work here. You know, you can work. So those are really the 4 things that we encourage you to do. But I want to talk about the giving here in a second. I'm not interested in your money right now. I'm interested in your time. Come in, get your hands wet, get your hands dirty. And if this is something you care about community, you care about families, you care about children, you care about the Darnells of the world that says, hey, I didn't get to pick my zip code, I didn't get to pick my parents, and you want to change their lives, then you might want to give. But first, giving your time. Giving your time, then you give in your heart, and then you'll give of your resources as you can. But we're running pretty good business here. It's important for us to really get people involved, caring about what we do. But those are the 4 ways. And you could find us at thompsoncff.org is the easiest way to find us.
Love that, love that. As we wind down, a piece of advice for anybody, whether they're in non-for-profit or whether they're in private sector, public sector, doesn't matter. People want to achieve. People want to become a CEO. People just want to lead their family.
Yeah.
You know, there's men out there craving to be part of the right culture, the right team, or step into a different. What are some suggestions to those individuals, men, women, doesn't matter? What are your thoughts on, man, you know what? I've been struggling. I'm not where I want to be. Yeah. I'm kind of complacent. Gosh, like something's got to change.
Yeah.
What changes do they need to make sure that they're on, you know, the as Robert Frost says, you know, the road less traveled. You know?
Yeah, I love that, and thank you for that. Here's the thing. I like to tell a little story about this. In marriage, if I try to fix my wife all the time, the marriage doesn't get better. When I stop focusing on her and I start focusing on me, things got so much better. And that applies in life, and it applies in any relationship, it applies in your leadership. So you got to put yourself in a cone, and it's a mirror. The only thing you're looking at is you. Because that's the only thing you can control, my friend.
Amen. You're right.
So first, start to look in the mirror, acknowledge what you see, and then you can do a couple things. But you have to stop thinking that you can change everybody and everybody can change you. You can change yourself. You have to make decisions to do that. And then I think you got to create some habits. I go back to say, it's like getting an airplane. When the mask goes down, don't put it on your kid first. And you're like, what the heck? Who created that idea? Like, that's my kid. Well, if you're incapacitated, you can't do anything for your kid. Same thing applies as a husband, a leader, a friend. Take care of yourself first. So your health has to be core. And that's everything in your health. That's your mental health, that's your physical health, that's your emotional health, your spiritual health. And here's another thing, I'm just creating this, your leadership health. So you got to look at all those things. And what habits are you creating to feed all those things so you can show up better? One, at home, no matter what home looks like. It could be you and your dog, it could be you and yourself. Show up well there so you can show up well everywhere else you go, including the workplace. So what habits do you have? Mine are simple. I wake up at 5:30. My wife's trained me well. I got to make her a cup of coffee. Can you believe that? That's that Latina coming out.
I can believe it.
She's like, "Y mi café?" You know. So I got to get that coffee out. You know. Then from there, I spend a little bit of time in my Bible, and then I'm off to get my workout. I'm working out, lifting. I'm walking. I'm in my sauna. I'm in my cold plunge. I'm reading something leadership and development, and that's before most people are even thinking about work. I'm already putting 2 hours in. And by the way, that's not before my workday, that's part of my workday. I envision that as part of my workday. And for me, that's important. So I can show up well. So, I think, again, and in those things, you're feeding yourself. One of the first things we ask leaders, what's the last thing you read?
Me personally?
Well, yeah, tell me.
Unreasonable Hospitality.
Okay, I love it. Read it. Good book. But here's the reality. You'd be shocked at how many people that are applying for a leadership role at Thompson aren't reading anything. Haven't read a leadership book. Have had no formal leadership training. Well, what's that going to tell me?
They're not investing in themselves.
Well, they haven't given me they haven't done the 10,000 hours. Right? And those are hours that you have to do on your own in addition to in the workplace. A lot of people think it's just the workplace's job to feed them. If I go to church and I'm fed on Sunday, I'll do anything else. Doesn't work. So I got to do work before and after the workplace for myself. And I think those are decisions people have to make. But I think go back, if you could do nothing else, don't blame anybody else for your lot. Look in the mirror, put yourself in that cone, and fix yourself. And the moment I started working on me, all of a sudden the stuff that bothered me before doesn't bother me anymore. It's the little things, man. The moment I started focusing on me, I became a better leader. When I focused on everybody else and I wasn't thinking what I was doing or not doing to help and impact them, that wasn't working. Focus on yourself first and foremost. You got to have the humility to do that, and that takes a minute. Like I didn't just have the humility to do that.
Yeah.
I got knocked down a few times.
Yeah.
You had to learn that.
Listen, this is probably one of the best podcasts. I think I've done 85 podcasts like this over the last several years. Man, I think if you want to study and get better and become a 2.0, 3.0 version of yourself, there's, listen, John Maxwell, I know you do a good job, but step to the side. We got Will Jones here and Nick Kalogeromitros on the Paper Trails podcast.
I just steal Maxwell. I just steal Maxwell stuff. So
I know, I'm kidding. Everything I got was from John. Yeah. So anyway, no, listen, this was tremendous. I loved the mindset. I loved talking about Thompson, your career, just your whole journey. I loved it, and you guys heard the 4 calls to action. Go, get in touch with Thompson. Go online, check them out, see how you can volunteer, how you can give of your time. I thought it was tremendous advice on for anybody listening. So appreciate you guys. And Will, thanks for being a guest on the podcast.
Yeah, it was a blessing. Thank you.
Absolutely, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.